Man, I really wanted to fit this into one, and I'm going to try to edit this into the other one if I can. If I can't, this is part two, guys. Well, you look down at this valley situation here from a little bit up on a ridge, and they say that these people could have lived in wood huts that they had built all out in these areas, and they only use those places for some sacred type thing, like Göbekli Tepe. Like they don't see anything people made for people at this point. Now they've only dug up some 15-20% of it at this point, but this has signs that look a lot like it, and I think that one's a shorter one too. There's the round circle that we've seen, and we'll see a couple of pictures of it of the same. And this is that pyramid one, but from outside of that good wall on the other side. Again, same picture actually, back just a few foot further, but you can see its rounded shape on this one, and it looks more like a tower. And in this version, it's not really a tower at all, but it's much bigger than the towers are, and this is all filled up with earth. And you can get up through this area here apparently, but this used to be a embankment that they have all around it and a big place on top, and they said these people didn't appear to be warlike in any way, shape, or form, but yet they've got all these defensive walls up and these offensive positions like position 1 here that really don't say that that wasn't going on in any way, shape, or form. Now, there's a lot of people that say that a lot of this is built late Romans because they did get a hold of this area. And of course, there was a time whenever this island got taken over by the Moors, although they say a lot of it was more the actual people that were there, and the Berbers and stuff that had gone up through here. And whenever they did the Muslim version of that came in through, that they actually did more of just into Spain, but some on this island too, but it doesn't appear to be built by any of those or changed, and they try to correlate a lot of its area and things that happened to it to Romans, and or this all may have been rebuilt by Romans. I think it's pretty neat. I've looked at what they say in the wiki on it, and the guy that did the video here said that they on the Russian version they say something totally different, on the UK version they say something totally different, on this article they say something different, on that one they say something different, and I got the same thing pretty much. And that is, I think, maybe misconstruing somewhat on little areas that they're choosing and saying, but they're acting like it's the whole area rather than saying, well, at this spot we found this date and so on. This is neat. This is a walkway here that's there, and people are walking on it, but it's actually walls and inset houses that are here and here and here and here and here and here, going up to a pyramid. And look at this pillar that's here with a flat top on it that looks like it's a hex shape. And here is again another flat top, totally carved with a hex shape. I think that's pretty neat too. It stands out. So this is an oddity. It kind of stands out some, and it looks like Göbekli Tepe when you look at pictures like that a lot. And the T's a little longer and wider, and it's not made out of two pieces, one, but then you see some wall like this that's built perfectly flat, and where all those stones are set in, and it gives you a total different appearance. Right there to the left was a cave, not this one, but I'll show you a picture of it here shortly. Here's another cave that goes in, and some of these go huge, long ways. You go into the other island here, and there's a lot of these too, and some of these look like mausoleums. I don't think they found any bones in them and stuff, but if they show the picture of that again, you'll see that there's 4 or 5 stones in it that are perfectly squared, and the rest of them is that junk stacked up. And another effect on this other one is that while it looks like a pile of confetti on the outside surface, this one is fairly smooth and uniform and tapered back. Isn't that unique? But look at all the walls that are right here in this area, this other settlement. Then you have water settled in this one area that's here off of it, but once you get a look at the amount of walls that they have here, here's another pyramid, And this one is smaller, but the big square that goes around it, if you can see the edges of it here and here that goes around, that's about the size of the bigger ones. And there's another one right there in the distance. Let me see if I can shoot that down for you here. There's another one right there in the distance. And you can see those walls going around there. That's about as big as the bigger ones, although the one over there isn't quite that size. But a lot of the other ones and that bigger one I showed you are that large. You can see this tapered in effect that they have on it here. And here's another one that they feel like is that same shape, a smaller version, much more clumsy looking. But you think that some of these things go off into the wall like a little cave. And when you go into it, it goes quite deep down through an area. And it's strange that they would keep it like that. And all made of rock. And now it's covered up with dirt somewhat, and you wouldn't know it. But that's a pyramid. And it's got a big wall that goes around it, smooth topped. And these people have noticed that this one is the one that's different too out of the deal. They have this huge lintel on top, but you can see how smooth it somewhat was, and now it's eroded away quite a bit. But you can also see the door entrance, and so the size of this thing would have been huge. And it also looks like it's a bent pyramid somewhat, like it gets up to here and it starts going in at a more angle. It's already angled, but it goes at more of an angle. And the weird thing about this one is it is twice as long as it is wide, so it is a pyramid that is built elongated, like a barracks or a longhouse, if you will. We'll look at a couple of pictures of it. Here it is from a distance in a nighttime shot, and time lapse letting the stars spin in the night sky. Here's a weird rock that looks like a human face and so on, but you can just imagine the amount of erosion that has happened to that rock that take up to that place. But you think this place is somewhat small, but here's one of the areas, and it shows you how big it is. Now here's one of those other type longhouses. It's a little different, not like the pyramid ones that they have there, and they're trying to correlate that to Romans and all these walls to Romans. And it doesn't look quite the same, and it doesn't have that lock-a-block fit together. It's just piled up real well, and then the very tops of them seem to be done okay, but the rest of it is not. It's the way that it looks. And there was a little step pyramid that's sitting here that looks a lot like the ones that you'll find on the Canary Islands and things too. And you think there's just maybe one or two, but there's a small one, there's a huge one, there's a real huge one there, but doesn't go as high. There's another one way in the distance right there. Yeah, and we're standing at one right now. Now what is this? Look how huge this is and squared off, and the size of it. That's a football field, each one of those squares. Here's a good look at these closer ones, and they try to say, well, that's got to be Roman because the tops are done a little different and da-da-da, and they're trying to correlate to it, but it doesn't have to be. What do y'all think? Y'all think they're just trying to shove it into where they think it's supposed to go? Here's a hewn out place that's different, and they correlate this to Roman times, and I might agree with them on this, for this looks like what is called a Mithraic, and it has that same type appearance to it that they generally do, although there's not necessarily a bench, and there's not a sign of Mithra in there at all. And I believe we're all the way in it now sitting, so Mithra would probably be right behind you right now. And look at this stacked up stones in this one center part, making the center, and you see how these other stones are spanning across. And they would have had that, but then on top of that, they would have had wood. It gives a total block off. And then there are confusions on whether they would have even had any wood, and because it's so astrology based, would they have had it open to the sky? Now here's the one that's built just like the pyramid, but it's 1.5 times as long as it is wide, and it's square. But they're all lock-a-blocked and they fit together perfectly. And that seems to be weirdo, as opposed to the pyramid ones that are there and just walls that may be there. And look how they put this together and used giant rocks and then other rocks and stuff. And then a place like this that they know would have had pillars running through it ever so often. But on top of this wall would have been another structure and spanning over it too. And built on top of here, and that's long gone also. Yeah, and even on these islands here, even though it's Mediterranean, just like you'd find on Canary Islands and stuff, you might find something that would make you think you were all of a sudden in the southwest of the United States and you had found some mound building culture that had been covered up. Or did you find a pyramid, a Mexican type pyramid? While they're rough, some of them are slightly stepped. One of them is longer than it is wide, and all their strange, crazy forms about them. There's some pyramids here, and there's some stonework that they can't attribute to a good time. And I don't know if they've done that fluoroscopy that they did to the fluoroscopy thing that they did to the Great Pyramid that they did to the one in Hyrcanopolis and figured out that it's at least as old, if not a little older than that. But they'd have to go to internal walls of these places and check certain ones and see. And I don't like the idea that they found a piece of burnt stuff at one place and then they're saying this whole expanse here is this age, because who knows how long that burnt piece is there. Wouldn't you have to find just about everything? Wouldn't you have to get to the point where you go, okay, we found just about everything and the oldest we found is, and so on. It doesn't seem to have gone to that point at all. But hell, it's too expansive. I mean, it's just enormous in the amount, and it's not just one settlement. So anyhow, guys, like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. And I'm going to try to plug this into one and see if it actually works this time and doesn't screw the whole thing up. If it does, I may have to redo the whole thing or just leave it 2 parts. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.